and equity-minded. So we have similarities here in terms of equity-minded in terms of teaching. So my background is, yes, I'm a mathematician at Texas Woman's University here in North Texas. It's not really 100% women university, it's 90% because we have a lot of physical therapists. We need men for those, and some nurses. We need men for those as well. So, but yeah, 90% we keep at the percentage, 90% women, and so teaching mathematics is really pretty tough. When I came in, uh, when I came here to the U.S., I was already I taught for 4 years in the Philippines, and when I came, I just I was just saying, okay, what will I do? I came here to get married, actually. So, but and be I would say a 100% stay-at-home mom. But in the end, I got bored, and so I went back to school. But what I'm saying is, when I went back to school, they thought that the Philippines would be like, I would say, third world, and so they made me take more courses. So, but in the end, I realized that I was actually okay, and they made me move forward with my PhD quickly. So in 5 years, I got my PhD. So, but I'm saying that as a professor, I come to have this feeling that, okay, they students come into me, especially, for example, calculus, diverse background. I can tell you that, different styles of teaching from their high school teachers and the different ethnic and socio-economic background. I can tell you that it's really tough to teach these, I would say, group. Every semester you have a change. So the techniques that we're doing is, of course, in order to do this, like, how do you put asset-based and equity-minded approaches in your teaching? Well, the boring kind of teaching is like, lecture based, and sometimes, you group students in order to do their discussion, but there must be something else that can be added to this. So I would say, there is a need for us to really understand what it means to do asset-based approach. So asset-based approach,
In order to understand what an asset-based approach is, we might want to start by referring to a dictionary. An asset can be seen as desirable things or qualities that people have. In the English as a second language environment, assets are thus knowledge that students have. An example of these assets could be the skills and talents of a student, the vocabulary the student has built up over the course of studying English, or the grammar he or she has learned. Knowing how to differentiate between he is, we are, and I am would thus also be seen as an asset. The asset-based approach is thus concerned with how a teacher recognizes, uses, and grows the desirable qualities students have to teach them new information. The asset-based approach focuses a lot on participation and inclusion, and could therefore mean that we should work with our students instead of working for our students. Now, it's important to note that an asset-based approach is not the opposite of a deficit-based approach, but is instead a way of trying to reach an equilibrium between the assets and deficits the student has. We thus use what the student knows as a means of expanding on the current knowledge, and in doing so, teaching new information. To illustrate this, we can look at an example of three glasses. In the first glass, there is no water. This represents the student's deficit and the knowledge that he or she still needs to learn. The second glass is half full and represents the necessary skills the student needs to know. The third glass is overflowing and represents the things the student already knows. Now, if we take the overflowing glass and throw this water into the empty glass, it means that the empty glass would now be filling up. This means that we take the assets the student already has to fill up the deficit. And once that glass is filled up with knowledge, we can use the new information learned to fill up the half full glass, thus ensuring that the glass representing what the student needs to know is full.
Step into Wix Studio and handle every part of your build from one platform. Map out your project
I need
with
to
an
get out of
AI-powered
here.
visual map
Sorry.
that generates site structures.
Okay, so sorry about that. Now
This video
let's
was
get.
brought to you by
Oh,
Squarespace. The
I
human
need to
brain
get out.
is a learning
Sorry.
powerhouse.
So going back to the talk, then I would like to ensure that we have a difference between asset base versus the uh, deficit base, but we want to make sure that we don't put them in just two plain silos. Sometimes we mix them. That's what that means. So in my class, this is what I do. After 20 years of teaching here at Texas Women's University, you can see that uh, I take day one as like the best time to get to know my students. And, I would fill the questionnaires, and these are asset-based questionnaires tested and proven. And so in the end, I get all of this information day one, and then hopefully when we are doing sharing, that means the student classmates will also hear what the assets and the good things that everybody brings to the table, right? So every time we do a project, for example, we group them into 3 or 4 students a piece. We are in a way saying, okay, your asset is writing. Why don't you do this part? Your asset is speaking. Why don't you do this presentation? This is really great, right? And so recognizing this is a valuable, I would say, experience for most students. Like they feel like they are being they're being valued, I would say. So the diverse backgrounds also make sense. Texas Women's University is considered a Hispanic serving university. Aside from 190% women, is also Hispanic serving. Actually, the population of the white, they didn't include it here, but the population of the white is now being the Hispanics are increasing very rapidly. And since we are actually in Texas too, right? But in the end, I'm trying to tell my students, okay, mathematics is a difficult subject, right? And then but sometimes you have this uh, you have this you need to be persistent, because persistence is the name of the game, and you don't have to be a genius and then be able to finish a STEM degree, STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. But if you're learning calculus, that means that you are right there entering the door, the foundational portion of STEM degrees. So I make sure that it's inclusive in terms of activities that I put in. What that means is, I create word problems, for example, and that in the end, like they say, okay, the word problems include so many characters, and then these characters, they are actually from different race and ethnicities, and at the end, they will say, okay, this is what we do, and then it doesn't have to be always the white person who is the smartest in the group, like that. So we are trying to design this kind of teaching. Equity minded, on the other hand, since time is not my friend, equity minded approach is like, okay, we have identified the assets of the students, and we have this culturally, I would say, responsive teaching, because we really try our very best to have this cultural responsiveness. But then we also need to understand that equity means that, it doesn't mean that we are all the time going to, I don't think that I can fairly uh, treat somebody like equity. Here is a different meaning. I would say valuing the asset as a, for example, a white person brings in, and sharing the experience of somebody from Asia, who has a different background, right? And at the end, the community that's being built, the learning community that I'm trying to set up, that like just like this. Yesterday, I had a student who came to me and say, "Okay, Dr. Madsen, would you please let me know if I can talk in front of the class so that I can say that uh I am a they." So she would say, "I am a they, Dr. Madsen. So please don't call me a she." Like, see, you see? So we are in a way saying, okay, I will treat you it my mindedness is saying, okay, I am so sorry. I got that mistake, but the when she presented that in front of the class, she felt like she was heard. She was given the chance to really say, okay, uh, that now they are very aware. Just call me by my name. Don't call me okay. And then implementation step in terms of the equity here. When I know as a math person, we would say, what are the details that you implement so that you're going to have equity in your classroom? Well, I will provide here a few steps. For example, in a case study that we have been doing, Hispanic serving institution, we would have this asset-based and equity-based minded teaching. And to save time, I will tell you what, we facilitate this. Instructor, what do you do? We reflect in terms of what kind of teaching experience our students have, like learning teaching experience inside the classroom. One of the things that I worry sometimes is I am kind of strict in when I'm rigor. I want to teach my students with rigor, but in fact it should not be. I was if I was brought up like Asian way, you have to learn this, to feed, you get fed with all of this information, you absorb them and you give them back to me. But no, in the end, my students were saying, "Oh no, you make us share actually different types of solutions to the problem in mathematics, and so therefore different types. It doesn't have to be one solution to a problem. Different ways to solve a problem." So learning from past mistakes, I will be very happy to actually tell my students that, okay, this is the common mistake of most of my students in the previous semester. So let's learn from this. And here's an example that I would like to share as in a mathematical classroom, I would say. So I will take example number 2. So this means that they are not applying the chain rule correctly. I don't know if you had a little bit of calculus in your background, but here's an example. Uh, how do you do what we call differentiation skills, right? So we want to differentiate using the chain rule. And the chain rule says that, you are supposed to, correct solution here is you're supposed to understand that it's chain. You bring it down, one half gets brought down, and then copy the base, take one from the power, and then take the derivative of the inside. And that should be the solution. But common mistakes of my students when it's asset based, that means that you go ahead and say, okay, what are the possible mistakes my students can commit here? And how do I guide them so that we can solve, like, the solution is how can we make increased learning outcomes, right? So this is what happens. I immediately tell them that common mistake, you can see here, students forget that they don't have the correct derivative here of the inside. The derivative of sine function is cosine. So that's a missing entity in the first mistake. In the second mistake, they immediately took the derivative of sine without taking the original. It's like peeling the onion, I would tell my students. When you are doing chain rule, you are going to peel the the onion, from the outside, you go inside. If you don't go inside correctly, then that means you don't have the correct derivative. But anyway, I don't want to bore you with this. Time is now but what is really happening then? What I do, I pair my students. I put one student who really understands the concept with another student who does not. And what that means is, they interact. One student will say, okay, can you explain to me why you are not getting this? I mean, positively, I would say, explain to your classmate what is not so clear. And then another classmate would respond who really understand. Oh, this is where, in her own words, not my words, this is what I did, and this is how I understand this part. And so they're learning from each other, and you request that, we get I would say, what we call a voice. You heard what she said, and now can you do it in your own words as well as a correction, right? And so that's what I mean by asset-based, equity-minded approach. So there are three students that, who would say, okay, what really happened here during the asset-based approach? Because I have, in my research, I do what we call the control group, right? And the section of calculus that I put this approach, one of the you can read the testimonials here of some of my students. They said the asset-based approach made me feel like my previous knowledge was valuable. It boosted my confidence and helped me understand complex concepts better. And then the other one, I appreciated how the teacher recognized our diverse backgrounds and use them to make learning more relatable and engaging. And collaborative projects allowed us to learn from each other and see different perspectives, because you bring in different perspectives, different background, different socioeconomic, yeah. And so, in a way, in a nutshell, we're saying there are benefits to do asset-based at the same time equity-minded approaches, right? The motivation level of students are actually, I can see that less absentees. The students are coming more, and they're not absent anymore, because they are getting involved. So conclusion wise, I'm saying that, yeah, importance of asset base, and hopefully we can extend this to other STEM courses or other courses. It doesn't have to be STEM, where, professors or teachers or instructors are trying to, very first week actually of the class, is collect all of those assets. I mean, recognize all of those assets, put them in a way that, they can be spread in groups, and therefore they share each other's strengths. So again, stop being afraid of what could go wrong. Focus on what could go right. And those are my references. And are there questions?